Hello again from my front porch. Today, we're going to chat about something that's actually really serious. Normally, I try to talk about stuff that's, you know, off the wall, upbeat, inspiring, uplifting. Um, but sometimes we talk about serious topics, and sometimes we talk about something that's this, but then I connect it to that, and those kind of. But the reality is, this is supposed to feel like we're just sitting on the front porch chatting with each other. And if we really were doing that, there would be times where the nature of this conversation would lean to the more serious things that are currently on people's mind right now. And certainly it would be the case for us if we were just sitting here chatting. And so there are some serious things going on right now. And I was really thinking about, okay, what to do this particular episode about. I was torn. I will admit. I thought about doing one that was completely not related to that, so it could be something else, something light, something distracting, away from that stuff. And I thought, no, again, if I think about it, this would be what would happen. This is how this would work. We'd be talking about this. So let's go ahead and talk about it. And maybe the next episode will be the fun, goofy, uplifting one. We'll just see. So anyway, just here in the last day or so, depending on when you're seeing the video, there was a situation in Minneapolis, Minnesota, where a woman named Renee was shot and killed in her vehicle by a federal agent, an ICE agent. Now, I've watched several video clips, some from different angles and different things. I've read many things about it. And of course, most of the write-ups have some degree of bias in them. And they're emphasizing these details over those details, or this one adds in this, well, but you got to consider this. And this one says, no, you got to consider that, because too many of these kind of reports all have an agenda. They have a spin that they want to add to it. And you got to kind of look at all of these things so you can start sorting through the pieces and try to come up with what really is the reality of what took place here. And I'm not going to claim that I have the monopoly on that I have a lock on that. But I would like to think that that because I try to be well-rounded, and I don't just look at what this perception is, but also this. And then, as I've said in the past, when I was studying for my journalism degree, our journalism professor said, you've heard the cliche that there's two sides to every story. Well, that is ignorantly wrong. There are as many sides to the story as there are people involved, and sometimes even more. And that's a concept that I've remembered ever since. There's not such thing as there's two sides to every. No. There's multiple sides. And the problem is everybody sees it the way they want to see it, from the perspective that they have. And so that means you have to be alert. You have to understand, I'm hearing this, but it's their perspective. I'm hearing, anyway, you get the idea. So near as I can piece together, what happened in Minneapolis is a woman who is from Colorado went to Minneapolis to help with the I'll say the resistance, the protests against ICE. In this particular incident, this woman was in a vehicle and was apparently leading other vehicles. She was the lead vehicle of the vehicles as they were trying to not just impede, but literally block ICE vehicles from doing what they were going to do. Now, there's nothing illegal for this woman to go from Colorado to Minneapolis to engage in protesting. That is totally valid. There's also nothing illegal in her driving a vehicle and leading other vehicles as part of this protesting. Where we start to run into things of question of legality, and let me preface this by saying, just because you do something that is illegal does not necessarily mean it's morally wrong. Likewise, you might do something that is morally right, but it's questionably legal. And so sometimes morality and law don't exactly line up the way that they perhaps should. So don't jump ahead of me. I'm not passing judgment here, but at the point that she and her fellow uh, protesters were seeking to block ICE vehicles and the ICE agents from doing what they were there for. At that point, you are obstructing justice in the purest sense of the definition. You are impeding the ability of the law enforcement individuals, whether you like ICE or not, whether you think ICE is legitimate law enforcement or not, they are classified as law enforcement. And when she and the others started to impede law enforcement from doing their duty, at that point, you are now choosing to put yourself in a position where you are defying authority. And again, one of the great things about our nation is that whole First Amendment concept, freedom of speech, we make it possible for you to stand up and resist, for you to stand up and say, I'm pushing back on authority. There are other countries around the world that just doing that would get you thrown in prison or maybe killed right on the spot. Thankfully, that is not the case of what happens here in the United States. We have our problems, but that's thankfully not one of them. So she's able to do this. She's able to say, I'm not gonna obey authority. I'm gonna take a stand against authority right here. Legitimate. Now, at that point, questionably legal, but still legitimate. But when you do that, when you say, I am going to willfully choose, because law enforcement's telling her, move your vehicle, get out of the way, and she moves to try to get even more in the way. At that point, she is now in total defiance of law enforcement. Now, you might say, but it's not that big a deal. Yeah, but it's not measured based on level of severity. It's measured on a yes, no. Did you impede law enforcement? Yes. Boom, you broke that. You're in trouble. That's it. It's just that cut and dry. And so she's willfully doing that. She's making that choice. Okay, cool. Make that choice. Do what you're going to do. But you have to understand there's going to be consequence comes with that. Now, normally that consequence would be you're going to get arrested. You're going to get hauled away. That's not what happened in this case. What happened in this case is that an ICE agent who felt that his life was in jeopardy, and there is at least one angle of the video where you can say, okay, yeah, it looked like the vehicle was kind of coming at him a little bit, start to be coming at, but not like the vehicle was going full speed trying to run him down. I mean, let's be clear about that. Other angles of the video barely even show the vehicle up against him or anything. And some would argue it's because he was stepping into the path of the vehicle because he's trying to stop it. He's trying to say, stop, you can't keep going. You need to stop your vehicle and get out of the vehicle. That's what he's doing. They're in odds. They're in conflict. He's wanting her to do something that she's obviously not wanting to do. She wants to do something in complete contradiction to what the instructions he's giving. So that's what brings him physically, him standing out there and her vehicle into proximity like that. And his response is to pull his gun and fire 3 shots into her vehicle, killing her on the spot. By all reports, she is unarmed. She is simply in her vehicle. Now, if she was targeting her vehicle to run him down, that would, in my opinion, that would not be unarmed. Her weapon is the vehicle. I mean, that would, but it's not. You can't really, from all the videos that I've seen and all the different angles, it's hard to establish there was that level of serious threat. Now, I did see today there was a report that the Secretary of Homeland Security has now revealed that this same agent had some incident about 6 months ago where he was dragged 300, 400 feet by a vehicle that he tried to stop. And so when this happened in Minneapolis, he wasn't going to let that happen again. And so he fired. Okay. I'm not going to argue whether that actually happened to him. I'm not going to argue whether that was or was not his mentality and what was driving it. What I will say is, to me, that sounds like PTSD, severe PTSD. And I wouldn't fault him. If I got dragged by a car for 300 feet, I wouldn't want to go through that again myself either. But that type of PTSD, that would justify him not being on the front lines anymore. That would justify him being put into a capacity where he's not going to be interacting with vehicles like this. He's not, because of that kind of reaction. That type of PTSD, again, I'm not questioning whether he has it. I'm not discounting. I'm not dismissing it. I'm accepting. Yes, he has this PTSD from something that happened before, but that should have had him pulled from the front lines. It is absolutely not, in my opinion, justification for him to have shot this woman, who it's really tough to say she was targeting her vehicle at him. Now, she was not obeying instructions. She was defying authority. Absolutely, she was doing that. But that's not reason for her to get shot either. Now, I want to parallel this, though, to something else that was also in the news here, because it happened right around the same time frame 5 years ago. And that is the assault on the U.S. Capitol by a mob of individuals who were pro-Trump. And there's all the accusations that Trump was responsible for this insurrection. I disagree with both of those points. Now, again, I've said before, I'm not a Trump fan. I'm not. But there is no evidence, a lot of hyperbole, but there's no actual evidence of Trump actually telling people, go down, break into the Capitol, terrorize the place. In fact, there's evidence of him saying the exact opposite, both verbally and online in tweets and stuff. You make the only people that can make that case are the people that just already don't like him, and they just think everything he does is bad and evil, and therefore, obviously, this is what he's doing. Maybe obvious, but it's not based in fact. It's not there. The other thing is calling that an insurrection, because I'll tell you, if that was a planned insurrection, it was the most messed up and ineffective insurrection in the history of mankind. What it looked like was a bunch of morons wandering around aimlessly like ignorant tourists. Now, once they got inside the Capitol, it was them getting inside the Capitol. Let me pause there. I could go off on this whole thing. I think what happened on January 6th at the Capitol was horrendous. I didn't have any problem with the people who broke into that Capitol building being locked up in jail. But President Trump pardoned, I think, all of them, or at least most of them. I'm not sure if there's anybody that still was in prison or not. I don't think I think anybody who broke into the Capitol building should have been held responsible. Now, why were they there? Why do people say it's Donald Trump's fault? Even I saw Jack Smith, the special prosecutor, now says that in their investigations, they lay the full blame at Donald Trump's feet. Well, I don't know exactly what Jack Smith is talking about, but there's a part of that I think he's absolutely right. The reason all those people were even in DC that day was because Donald Trump promoted a protest rally. Come there to the National Mall and let your numbers be, let Congress see that all these people are here upset about what we're claiming is a stolen election. Now, we have seen in more recent, like just within the last few months here, we've seen increasing amounts of evidence that indicate maybe there really was something fishy going on there. And so some of these cries for, wait a minute, we need to look into this, maybe weren't quite as far off as they were name called to be back then. But that's another discussion for another time. Point here is all these people came to DC to protest. That's it. And just like this lady from Colorado going to Minneapolis, there was nothing illegal in those people traveling to DC to protest the results of the election. Donald Trump also encouraged the crowd to go to march down to the Capitol as part of their protest. He did not say There's nowhere. You will not find any sound clip. You'll not find it written anywhere where he told them to go attack the Capitol and to break into the Capitol and to terrorize. He didn't do any of that, but he did tell them to march down there because, again, it's part of the visual. We want the people in Congress to know that you're here and you're mad and you're loud and we're doing it. That was it. Just like the woman in Minneapolis getting together with the other vehicles and trying to move into position. That in and of itself, not illegal. What happened in DC was that some individuals, because there are, I don't even know how many people, but a couple million people at this protest, and only a small fraction of that mob actually breaks into the Capitol. Everybody who was there was not part of that mob, was not part of that insurrection that we're told to call it. Most of the vast majority of the people there were only there to protest, and that was it. So they did nothing illegal. They did nothing. Now, I will throw in my little editorial comment. I think it was stupid. I don't think it made any sense whatsoever for Donald Trump and the Republicans to encourage people to even be there to do that. I thought it was just dumb. It was not going to change anything. It's not like because all these people show up that the folks in Congress who hate Donald Trump and are excited that Joe Biden has beat him in the election. There's no way those people are going, oh, well, there's all these people here. Well, maybe we should just not certify this election. That's not going to happen. That was dumb. It was all for show. It was mostly for Trump's ego. I mean, let's be real. But the problem is that him encouraging that large group to be there meant that there were going to be a splinter of that large group of crazies, of morons, of idiots. And whether you think they did on their own, whether you think they were influenced by bad actors, we know that there were a lot of undercover FBI agents in the crowd that are alleged to have been instigators, encouraging some of the illegal activity. I'm not going to go there either. I don't know. I'm just saying, however you think it happened, that those who attacked the Capitol chose to attack and break in, it wasn't the whole group. In fact, it wasn't the majority of the group. It was this smaller subset of that group, and they were idiots. Pure and simple, in my opinion. Now, at the point they marched down to the Capitol, they've still not broken any laws. They're still totally legit, just like the lady in Minneapolis. However, at some point, they reach the barricades, they reach the barriers, they start to push through. Someone tells them keep moving forward, and they do that. And they start to go up to the Capitol. And at that point, that's where they have chosen, just like she did, to start to obstruct, to start to do things she's not supposed to. And you know full well there were law enforcement there on megaphones telling people, stop, turn around, do not, stay away from the doors. The true idiotic morons ignored it completely and proceeded to break in and then just wander around the Capitol like lug nuts. I'm being generous. There are so many other things. I see the video of these people just wandering around in the Capitol, and I'm embarrassed for them because, I mean, after all that rah, and breaking out, you get in, you just kind of wander around like, hey, look at this. And not that I would have wanted them to be more violent and destructive. My point is, they clearly had no plan. There was no insurrection. There was them just buying into the mob mentality and doing this stupid thing. Well, then they got arrested. They went to jail. Now, I think some of the jail sentencing was way harsh, as some judges tried to make examples out of those individuals. And I get why that happened, but like, yeah, come on, let's balance this a bit. But point is, they were punished. And then the president pardoned them. I don't agree with that. I don't think. Now, I think I don't know if the president can reduce sentences. Honestly, I don't know if that's what I would have preferred that the president would have done, rather than just um, absolving them of any legal responsibility, letting them still be held legally responsible, just maybe not in prison for multiple years, for maybe shorter period of time. Back to Minneapolis, though, you have a woman who, just like those people in D.C., chose to defy authority, chose to ignore the laws, and chose to contradict law enforcement and to do something that they felt passionate about. This woman felt passionate about it, just like the very misguided, ignorant individuals in DC had done 5 years earlier. However, where those individuals got arrested, sent to jail, and ultimately pardoned, this woman, wife, mother, lost her life because of what I'll describe as a trigger happy ICE agent. And I'm not anti-cop. My dad was a police officer. I support police in general, but I will acknowledge that, as with any profession, there are individuals in that profession that have no business being in that profession. I don't know anything about this guy who shot this woman. What I do know is the only defense that I've heard for how he acted was this PTSD line. In fact, one of the other videos, news segments that I watched about this, there was somebody quoting actual portion of the ICE agent's handbook, manual thing, that says they are not supposed to fire on an individual driving a moving vehicle. So if that's, I mean, I don't have a copy of it, but if that's true, if that's the actual policy, then he never should have fired on her in the front. Should have fired at her tires or fired at the engine or whatever. But instead, he panicked, apparently because of the PTSD, and killed her. The people from January 6th, who I think deserved their punishment, got off. I mean, I won't say completely got off, because their reputations and their backgrounds have been tarnished by what they did. But they're alive. They're still around. This woman, she deserved to get arrested. Absolutely. Absolutely deserved to get arrested, because she was in violation of legal authority. She did not deserve to die. And the manner in which it was conducted apparently is in defiance even of the regulations of the agency itself. Again, I haven't seen it. I'm just taking the word of the commenter that read that. The difference in these scenarios is because there's all the similarity. I can draw the parallels. But the difference is literally life and death. And where that difference lies is that at the Capitol, where there was a whole army of law enforcement officers, they did, with the exception of one, was an Ashley Babbitt, with the exception of one individual protester, the Capitol Police did not resort to that level of violence. Good for them, because that would have been horrible if they would have opened with live rounds and just started mowing down. That would have been just ugly, awful. That would have been just, yeah. But this woman in Minneapolis, whether you agree with what she was doing or not, whether you support what she's doing or not, whether you support what ICE is doing or not, this woman, she had every right to protest. She had every right to be there. She did not have every right to be obstructing and to be ignoring law enforcement like she did. I mean, that's, if it's against the law, it's not right for you to do that. And so law enforcement, again, would have been totally in their rights to arrest her for what she was doing. The fact that she was shot point blank, unarmed, in a vehicle that was not posing any type of immediate threat to anyone is horrible. Absolutely horrible. And there are a lot of folks now trying to spin the interpretation as to why that is. Why is it? Why did this woman get killed? Well, because ICE needs to be disbanded. Homeland Security needs to be defunded. Blah blah blah. I think those are throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Again, I don't think all ICE agents are like this guy. I hope not, at least. But they're just like at the Capitol. There needed to have been more preparation. There needed to have been more law enforcement. The National Guard should have already been there. With the size of this crowd and the temperaments that were on display, there should have been much more security, much more protection of, especially since it's to protest the election results that are being certified at the Capitol. There should have been much more protection around the Capitol. We know that now in hindsight. Likewise, in Minneapolis, there should have been better management of those ICE agents, specifically this one who pulled the trigger. He shouldn't have been there in the first place if he had the PTSD that his boss says he had. But even in that situation, where's the accountability? Where is the oversight? Where is the concern about going too far, of getting too aggressive, of pushing the boundary too much? Just doesn't seem to be there. And for a lot of people who are even supportive of rounding up illegals and sending them back, this type of massively aggressive approach, deadly aggressive approach, doesn't sit well, and it shouldn't. Now, I don't think that this incident means all ICE activity needs to be shut down and we need to stop deportation. I don't think that's what it means. But it does mean it'd be real, just like happened after the events on January 6th, 5 years ago. There needs to be a deep, hard, serious look at what happened, why it happened, and how do we prevent that from ever happening, or anything like it from ever happening, ever again. Like I said, not the most uplifting episode, but if we were on the front porch, like we are virtually right now, this is probably what we'd be talking about. So there you go. I'll try to come up with something lighter for the next episode. With that, I'll let y'all go, and I'll see you next time from my front porch.